Some male inmates in England and Wales will be freed up to 70 days before the end of their sentence to open up prison spaces. Now, sex offenders, terrorists, plus prisoners serving 4 years or more are not eligible, but some violent offenders, as well as burglars, thieves and fraudsters, will be. Now, our prisons are currently at 110% capacity, with new figures showing that there are more than 87,000 people behind bars. The government has called the early release a temporary measure and said that they will always ensure that there is enough room to keep dangerous offenders behind bars. Do we trust that, Lynn?
I just think this is, it's an awful idea. I can see why there would be an argument for some of the criminals who have done, non-violent crimes, petty crimes. But the issue is, when we release these prisoners, what are we going to do with them? Probation has already seen a capacity of a cut by 40%. The amount that they could invest in a prisoner has extremely been cut. We look at the housing crisis, that obviously is going to be extended to people who are in need of accommodation when they're leaving prison. So those people are just going to re-offend and end up straight back in the prison system. So it's all well and good saying, we need to release these prisoners, but if we don't have the support system there to put them back into society as positive members of society, they're going to end up straight back where they started.
And when the government's saying that they will always make sure there's capacity in prisons for dangerous members of society, for dangerous criminals. I mean, this could be domestic abusers out early. That doesn't sound right.
Well, I don't think the government is suggesting that domestic abusers are going to be let out early, and it's rare.
They're eligible. They may be eligible.
It's rare for me to defend the government's point of view, but I think when you look at the penal system in this country, we have inherited a Victorian prison system. Nothing really has improved in the last 100 years. And what are we going to do? Build more prisons, make more prison spaces. The MOJ predict that there's a longer term rise in the prison population. It's going to rise to between 93,000 to 106,000 by March 2027. We do not have enough prison spaces. It's already 110% capacity. So what are we going to do? Dip back into Dickens and get some rusting Hulk ships over from America to put prisons there? We don't have the space. Instead, a government of whatever colour, red, blue, yellow, needs to get to grips with this overcrowded, underfunded prison system. And the money needs to go into prisoner rehabilitation. In fact, and I think that Alex Chalk, if he were honest to himself and not with the Tory heartland, would say that actually the money needs to go into prison rehabilitation. 10 years ago, Michael Gove went to visit Texas. Now, you wouldn't have thought that Texas would be the kind of place, which obviously they still have the death penalty, which would be a centre of prison reform. But actually, because it's a Republican state, they didn't want to build more prisons. It wasn't obviously the Texans didn't want to spend their money that way. So instead they had to look at other solutions. And one of the solutions they came up with was, instead of putting prisoners in jail, particularly those knuckleheads, the Texans said, that were having drug problems, was to enforce drug rehabilitation programs. And they had to sign a contract with the judge. They didn't go to prison, but they had to do these drug rehabilitation programs. And the evidence was that worked much better than sending them to jail.
Well, Lynn, what about that actually? Rather than building more prisons, because there's an argument to say that prisons aren't working, why don't we put more money into rehabilitation? For example, shoplifting is on the rise. A lot of that is down to addiction. If we took those individuals, rather than throwing them in a jail cell, we gave them rehabilitation, we gave them medical help. Surely that is a more efficient use of money.
I think when it comes to the group of people that, like you said, they've got addiction issues, and oftentimes they shouldn't even be there. They should be in rehabilitation centres. But what I don't want to have a discussion about, or what I don't think should be looked at, is pumping loads of money in to a system where people actually need to be punished, where we see people leave prison with degrees that people who are law-abiding citizens would never dream of being able to even afford to go to university in this day and age, where they're almost...
Are you saying that prisoners shouldn't get education?
No, I'm saying no.
They shouldn't have degrees while they're in prison.
No, I didn't say all.
That's what you were saying. You did.
I didn't say all. I said what I don't want to see.
You don't want to see.
Emily, what I said is, what I don't want to see is loads more money being pumped in, where we're seeing a heavy amount of in the name of rehabilitation, them having a better quality of education than those who are law-abiding. No, I don't want to see it. I think we need to talk about punishment. I do think we need to build more prisons. But for those who have been in the prison system that need rehabilitation where there's drug addiction, we need to invest more in mental health and rehabilitation centres.
And education is the way forward for that.
But what would you tell loads of people that have really abided by the law, done their best, and they don't get to have that education because they've had to be forced into work from age 16?
No, they don't.
And then
No,
they're
they
looking
don't.
at
They can
people
go to they can
like,
go to A-level,
like Huntley.
Your education
We
is
are
still free up
we
until
are
the age of
having-
18, and then you can take
Let
a
me ask
student
you a
loan.
question
Then you
then.
can have a student loan if
I'll
you,
ask you a question.
and then you can go to university.
Do you think child killers who are in for life with limited possibility of parole should be able to get degrees worth $9,000 a year? Do you?
Yes, I do.
Yes,
Because
that's
look, you
absurd.
said no. Let me tell you why.
Ridiculous.
Because
You're in for killing
part
a
of the
child.
problem-
Okay, let
no,
Emily
let me
speak.
speak now.
Degree.
Let me speak now because part of the massive problem in our penal system is that there is a massive recruitment problem with prison warders. Every day, those men and women who do those often very low-paid jobs are in fear of their lives. Someone, and you're taking an extreme example, but that's fine. I'll run with Ian Huntley. Ian Huntley is never ever going to be allowed out. You do not want violent offenders. You want them to give them something to do. You want them to be edgy. You want them to go to the prison library. You want them to get a degree. You want them to make good use of their time. Otherwise, those violent offenders will attack the prison guards, and it makes the recruitment even worse, and the penal system falls apart.
But I want to see child killers in the stocks, in chains.
You would support the death penalty for that, wouldn't you?
Of course, for child killers, of course.
Okay, I want to get off childcare only because it is such a
Very
passionate
rare.
topic. It's rare, thank goodness.
Fortunately.
But Lynn has a point here, and there are a lot of people at home. Do give us a call on what you think about this. 0207 862 2222. There'll be lots of people at home that are incredibly frustrated that not just education, access to dental care, access to a GP appointment, healthcare is incredibly difficult when they are working and paying taxes and law abiding, and yet you commit a crime and you get a roof over your head, you get 3 meals a day, and you get easy access to these sorts
It costs
of things.
over
And that very
$40,000
much-
for one prison.
This is exactly
riles
why.
people
This is
up.
what,
40,000
this is
for one-
exactly why the money should go into rehabilitation. In and like
To what end?
So like
People are struggling that actually abide by the law.
But you're talking about something different
we're
here.
talking about different things here. You're saying, Storm, why, if you're in prison, you get access to GPs or healthcare, you get access to dental systems, and that's unfair to people who struggle to get those appointments. And that's exactly my point, because I agree with you. That's why we should not be sending more people to prison and increasing prison spaces, and that money should be used to rehabilitate instead. The throw up and lock away the key argument is so reductive. It's something out of Victorian England. It didn't work then, it doesn't work now. A whole root and branch review needs to be taken. And Alex Chalk, if he were here now, I think he would agree.
OK, let's go to the phone lines. Derek from Suffolk, what's your view on this? Do you think that we need to start letting prisoners out early just to free up some spaces?
No, definitely not. Some prisoners are beyond rehabilitation.
Well, just to be clear, Derek, I mean, you're possibly right on that. It is not going to be Category A prisoners. It is not going to be terrorists and apparently sex offenders. But you could see people that have domestically abused out early.
What people don't seem to realise is that some people are born evil. Some people are born rotten.
Oh, Derek.
OK, Derek, but...
Yes, I'm afraid I've been through the system since I was a boy. And I've seen people that are rotten from the day they're born. And you cannot rehabilitate people. That woman's face, she had the do-gooder on the left-hand side.
Emily, Derek, we don't need to be nasty.
No, I'm not being nasty, but...
It's all right, Derek. I'm happy to be called a do-gooder.
You've got to be realistic on some things. There's people in my area, they left school at 14, they're now 35, they've been in prison 16 to 20 times. They come out of prison on a Thursday, they're burgling people's houses on a Friday.
But doesn't
These
that...
people are not put away.
Derek...
They're put away to protect society,
yes,
not to make them good people.
But Derek, doesn't it prove then that prison doesn't work if they're just coming out and reoffending?
Well, what are you going to do with such people? Let them burgle people's houses every day of the week?
Find the source of their problems and rehabilitate them. Maybe they need therapy.
The source of the problems is from childhood. They're born to parents who are as daft as they are, and they carry on regardless.
Well, but Derek, doesn't that mean that maybe cognitive therapy could help them retrace their steps and where their issues lie?
Do you know these people? They laugh at people like with these such comments. They're born. They don't want to work. They are born to burgle.
So what's the answer then, Derek?
Lock them up and keep them away from society.
Derek, okay, I'm going to...
outside are protected.
Derek, it's the do-gooder here. It's the do-gooder, Emily here.
Yeah,
I am going to say to you, okay, I mean, I totally disagree with you, but I'm going to say, let's go with your argument. You lock them up, throw away the key. That is going to cost you more and more and more of your taxes. Taxes that instead could be spent on getting you a dental appointment more quickly, or taxes that instead could be spent on a new hip for you.
Argument don't hold water.
Pardon?
Your argument doesn't hold water. What about the police resources? What about the helicopters coming?
Oh, what? We should take away money from the police. We should take away money from everywhere else and put it into the MOJ. Because what you're saying is it's going to cost more money, and it doesn't help.
Yes,
it doesn't solve the problem long term.
Yeah, but I do understand where Derek is coming from. If we release them on a regular basis with all of this, softly cognitive therapy for all of them, even the ones that, like he said, keep on returning, that is a huge cost to the taxpayer also.
Okay, Derek, thank you very much for your call. I've got another call waiting. Linda from Berkshire, what's your thoughts on this? Do you think it's acceptable to let prisoners out early? I mean, most people only serve half the sentence they're given anyway, so it's kind of false advertising.
Well, yes, because if it's if it's a serious thing that they're being in for, no. But if it's something trivial, yeah, you should, because prison doesn't cure everything. It doesn't solve the problems. There's a lot of people with a lot of issues that need other help to keep them out of prison. And the lady who's talking about, education, they're not going to get a better education than somebody's child who pays for it. They're going to get bog standard education. Now, a lot of people go in with no education. They're not computer literate. A lot of people, youngsters, aren't computer literate. They need support just a little bit to give them a start on the bottom of the ladder to help them. And not everybody, especially if it's a drug addiction, drink addiction, you don't cure it, you live with it for the rest of your life. So it can always come back to bite you in the backside. Yes, you may reoffend, but if you've got a little bit of education and give you a start, I know people who've had it and it's helped them a lot. They actually run their own businesses now.
I hear what you're saying, Linda, that actually in some circumstances, maybe you treat the addiction, maybe you educate them so that they can get a job and provide for themselves. But I suppose the worry is, where is that grey area? You have to have a prison sentence of less than 4 years. Well, if you're being put in prison for 3.5 years, I think you've done something quite substantial to get there, and I think that might be the worry for some people, Linda, that we're letting these people out early.
What's true? Sorry, Storm. What you said for those who have committed trivial crimes, what would you consider a trivial crime?
Always, some people they've been giving people bigger sentences for other crimes that they've upped the sentencing. You can get serious. You can get.
I mean, Linda, from what I hear and what I read, it seems to be going the other way, that actually the prisons are full, so they're barely getting any sentences at all.
They will be full because they're just locking anyone up for everything. It doesn't matter what you do. I saw a documentary where there was an old boy in his 70s in prison because he was stealing food because he had no money, and they classed him as a repeat offender.
Well, now, when you look at people, is an interesting example. But Linda, okay, for example, prison. What if we're talking about a domestic abuse? Shoplifting is an interesting example, but what if we're talking about someone that's a domestic abuser, coercive behaviour, really, really nasty individual, and they're getting out 70 days earlier? Yeah, how does that individual feel? How does the victim feel?
Everybody gets scanned before they come out of prison, and it's quite tough scanning. Very tough.
I mean, we hear all the time about that going wrong and people being put back in prison pretty quickly.
Yeah, but look, everywhere you go, something happens. It's human. But most people get scanned. And there's people in prison who should be released and aren't. And yet there's other people that have been released and should stay in. So you need to look at the whole picture, not just the fact they're criminals, they've done something serious. But okay, some of these people have mental issues.
I hear what you're saying, Linda, but just with the last comment that some people are released that shouldn't be and some people are kept in that should be released. So, perhaps what you're saying is that you don't trust the judicial system?
Some of it is good, but like I say, you've got humans. Some people look at a case and think, no, they're not ready, and maybe they are ready. So you need to just check. Okay. They need to be sure that they need to stay in prison, and if they're not, then you should release them early. So long as they're not mass murderers, they're not going to go out and kill somebody.
No, they won't be able to
thing.
They won't be able to get off 70 days early. But Linda, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for all your calls on this.